What's up, people of YouTube? I'm Karsatowski and welcome to the Karsatowski Bowling YouTube channel. So today's bowling breakdown is the 1982 Greater Hartford Open. So let's get on to the title match. Okay, here's the title match of the 1982 Greater Hartford Classic featuring Pete McCordick versus Pete Weber. So two Petes going off against each other. And this is actually my first time seeing Pete McCordick having a mustache. Perfect strike. Now, Pete McCordick, I believe, has bowled, I want to say, the fourth televised perfect game in PBA history. And he would do that a few years after this match. Now, Pete Weber, unlike Norm Duke, has made a handful of step-ladder finals before he won his first tour title. Pete at this time would have been about 20 years old during this time, or may have just turned 20. Norm Duke has the record as the youngest player to have won a PBA Tour title. Let's look at Pete's footwork. Takes a classic five-step approach. His game, Pete's game, has actually changed fairly little compared to Norm's game over the years.
Looking down at the approach, going to make an adjustment to the left, Dave. It's important that he gets this one close to the pocket.
Yeah, still holds his ball about up to his chest, close to his shoulders. Takes fairly slow steps, has that really high backswing.
I think he made the right adjustment though, didn't he?
Probably his release is the thing that has definitely changed the most over the years. His release has become much cleaner and is adapted very nicely to the new equipment. And at this time, this is reactive equipment that these players are using, and also some plastic balls for spare shots. And look at the ball rack. There's only two balls on the ball rack, and Pete has one. So that means that one of these guys has two bowling balls, and one guy only has one.
People who watch the Pro Bowlers tour on television, a couple of nice young friends of mine, Barbara Smith and Chap Brown. Chap's a former tennis grade at University of Florida, getting married this afternoon, so they're taping the Pro Bowlers show today so they can watch it on their honeymoon.
Ah, congratulations.
And look at the ball reaction of that. That was missed quite a bit right, and it just never hooked down lane. The ball motion back then was just so subtle that players had to be much more accurate. And that's really due to the equipment that they use, and also the fact that there wasn't a whole lot of oil used back then, which if there was a ton of oil used back then like we have today, then nothing would hook down lane. And also make a lot of spare shots more difficult because the ball would end up pushing a little bit further, so players would have to make adjustments to account for the oil as well. And this is a pretty typical down and in game from Pete McCordick. Pretty typical of players back around the 70s and 80s era. Nice shot there. The thing about having a game like that, though, is that you're very accurate. And a lot of those guys had to be back then because, again, there's just no miss area at all. You look at old footage and that's what it is. Like, you just don't have equipment that hooks from gutter to gutter. And, you know, you have to be pretty accurate in order to strike. And even then, when the ball hits the pocket, if it's not dead flush, a lot of times you'll be leaving flat 10 pins, or even if the ball gets a little bit too high, some 4 pins. It's a nice looking shot from Pete Weber.
Strong, powerful ball of young Pete Weber.
Pete's another player who uses the full approach. Man, I'm not sure if I've ever used the full approach in my life. I use probably about half of it, and even then, if I stand over at the set of dots that's close to where the ball comes out of the ball return, which is the second set of dots, my feet are still half a step away from the foul line. I take very small steps when I bowl. It's another good shot from Pete. And so both these players are pretty much about even if McCordick strikes.
We are attempting to make corrections.
Ooh, man, he got that one just a little bit to the right. I'm actually surprised that it got to the pocket that well. That's a lot of times what can happen when you don't get your ball to hit real flush into the pocket. A lot of flat tens can come your way.
He's pressed up against the ball return.
Good pickup.
10 years on the tour and no victories. Bo Burton talked with him earlier and asked him why he's done so well here.
I think the main reason I bowled so well this week here is during the finals I was able to move out and play between the first and second arrow, going pretty much up the boards. This is my best shot. It enabled me to carry. I felt real comfortable with the shot. I was able to make good shots and got loose with it.
But he can't play that line today. He has to play between the second, third arrow, the track area.
Oh, he actually tripped out the 10 pin that time.
I noticed last night as he was just barely holding on to his lead. He went against Marshall Holman, and Marshall threw a heck of a game at him. And Pete never smiled once until it was all over, and he knew that he was in the driver's seat.
Got the fan.
He never cracked a smile.
Well,
on the side there. Look at that ball return.
But McCordick came back with a turkey.
It's got a wide base, and you could just, it doesn't extend out too much. It's pretty much right next to the where the lane actually dips. Where there's that little baby step, pretty much. Pete was lucky to trip out that 10 pin. Ball went really high.
He has the 4-7-10 going in there. He's cutting through the 6-pin, lays down in the channel. The 3-pin comes over and gives a little.
Yeah, look at that.
Break. And the old man's out there in St. Louis.
Yeah, pin carry was not something that was heavily available back then. Man, just real high backswing right there.
If you want to learn how to energize a bowling ball, emulate this release. The thumb down early in the release, wrist right on the side, medium loft, about 12 inches.
Now look at that low profile. Now right there is actually not too dissimilar from a lot of power players' games of today. The main few differences is that there's a very little cupping of the wrist and elbow, and Pete's hand is more or less on the side of the ball. But overall, very similar fundamentals of the current power game, and that is just an awful break, leaving the solid 9.
Then he leaves a shot you very seldom ever leave, a solid 9. That ball cutting through so sharply, the 5-pin got chopped off the 9. Normally that's a strike. Pete has to settle for a spare.
This young man who is fifth in earnings in 1982. He could win here today. You know, he'd go over the $100,000 mark in career earnings. Said, take that money today and make a down payment on a new house for myself and Dee Dee.
Championship pair is playing a little bit higher scoring as it was that whole week. They didn't seem to use as many bright lights. You always hear a lot of the players now talk about the bright lights on the set where they bowl. But it seems to me that they don't use as many bright lights, at least on the lanes.
Pete McCordick has an identical twin brother, Paul, who's also a PBA member. plays at the regional level.
That's a fairly similar shot that he had, I believe, in the second frame. Yeah, if he keeps getting his ball to that spot, it's just never going to recover.
Has proved to stick with the game more and been more diligent and has improved into a real great player.
Nice cover.
Pete McCordick with a spare up in the sixth. Also not a simple pickup there. Trailing by 7.
One thing I like about McCordick's style is how he's so methodical and how he hits the foul line so solid. You very seldom ever see McCordick fall off balance. He's got everything in time as he comes through with the shot.
Perfect. Well, he's got that left lane pretty much down. But you got to figure out both lanes if you're going to have a chance to win. You can't just only figure out the one lane unless the other guy's struggling on one lane as well.
Putting the pressure back on.
You know, pretty much, you know, I remember it was just a few years ago when I heard some commentators say about the only thing that's changed in the sport of bowling is the pins. And I was about to say that until I remembered string pins.
He doesn't believe it. He does not believe
yeah, pretty much just about everything about bowling has changed, especially since this was recorded. Yeah, that's a ring 10 right there. Been seeing a lot of flat 10s, and that's really the first ring 10 that we've seen.
Still shaking his head.
He's been good with the spares so far today. You said he struggled a little bit in the tournament, but he's taken extra time, and they've been so important in the matches thus far.
Great cover. Almost bounced that out of the pit and onto the lane.
6 pins. Pete Weber now on the lane where he has made a considerable adjustment.
Well, both players have remained clean.
And
Pete hasn't struck in 3 shots.
Saying to himself,
second, third, and 2 fourth-place finishes this year. So he's had a really good year for not winning a title. This is his 5th step-ladder finals of this season. And I believe it's his 6th or 7th in his career. So it took him a little bit to win his first title.
We noticed the other shots that he was around the pocket on the left-hand lane.
It is a baby split. If he wants to keep this clean game going, he's going to need to pick this up. And, you know, Pete can double up and take a slight lead, but he's really going to need to...
2-1 for a pro.
Yeah, that's about the recommended way to get it. Oh, that's way too far. Oh, my goodness. First, I thought it was going to go in the gutter, actually. Well, that is an open frame for Pete Weber. And he just dug himself a fairly tiny hole, I'd have to say. He still can get out of it, but if Pete doubles, he's going to put a lot of pressure. Well, if McCordick doubles, he's going to be able to put a lot of pressure on Pete. He can double up in the 8th and 9th frame and take a 17-pin lead. Oh. It was a really good shot. I thought he had that one.
2 things to watch with Peter is watch his arm swing as it bumps out slightly to the right at the top of the swing, but how he realigns and gets it right in close to his ankle, almost slides, hits himself in the ankle as it goes by his foot.
Now you can see just how much further to the side of the ball the pros had their hands back in that time.
By this young man.
And that's really to get a lot of side motion on the ball, because back then, if you wanted your ball to actually have that slight down lane reaction to make a curve, you had to get the ball rolling to the side. Obviously nowadays, with the bowling ball having a core that actually makes the ball hook, you just have to have your hand up the back of it and have a little bit more control.
Pete Weber does.
So back then, the bowling balls didn't hook enough, and you had to really force it to hook just like on that ball. But now, the bowling balls are a lot stronger now, and you don't have to do as much anymore to get them to hook. So it's basically went the other way around when reactive was released.
In the 9th and 10th, McCordick cannot be shut out.
Which I think the reactive bowling ball in and of itself is one of the reasons why I really and truly think that a lot of players who were dominant in the 50s and 60s and even 70s up until probably early 80s just could not really compete that well at a high level. And I think Earl Anthony was one of them, but that's a topic for another video, I guess. That's a good strike from Pete Weber. All right, so Pete Weber. Weber's down by 7 pins.
So I guess you're right. It could be a tie, but right now, young Weber has to strike to take the lead in the match.
He needs to strike out in the 10th frame to force Pete McCordick to get the first 2 strikes and 4 pins to win. It's way wide, and somehow he got that ball to mix him up. Whoo, buddy. Look at this shot. Pete gets a little bit in front of the ball, but you can see it gets that light mixer, can opener kind of strike, bucket crumbler strike.
Light area, and he's taking the lead in the match.
He'll need to get his ball a lot higher flush because stuff like that usually does not happen more than once, especially during this time. Oh, it actually hooked enough. That's a high flush strike. Okay. He needs one more. He needs really good count on this ball to force McCordick to get the first 2 strikes.
McCordick to throw 2 strikes. Needs 7 or better to force Pete McCordick to strike twice.
Saw the graphic before. He has never won a PBA title.
Come on. Oh my goodness.
Just enough, David. 7's as good as a strike.
Those yanked left. Not good enough to go Brooklyn. Dadgum.
The graph is correct. McCordick needs 2 strikes to win. He has not had a strike on the right-hand lane in the match.
Excuse me. McCordick needs 2 strikes to win.
10 pin in the 4th. He was light in the 6th.
He's been sitting for a pretty good amount of time.
Right now he can afford
so let's see if he can come up
on the right-hand lane.
The clutch moment. Man, he got his ball wide again, and it just skated through. Wasn't enough to take out that 7 pin. And I'd have to say it, at that moment, a legend was born. Right there. And that was the first time that a father and a son duo had won on the PBA Tour. And I would probably say that most people knew that Pete had a really big future ahead of him, but I doubt that anybody would have thought that Pete Weber would not only surpass his father in titles, but he would surpass it by more than 10 titles and pretty much everything else in his career, and join his father among the top 10 most title holders. Well, actually, he'd surpass it by 7 titles, not more than 10. All right, trophy presentation. Check over there. I think that's his first of 3 wives, I want to say, but oh well, I'm not gonna say nothing about that. Anyway, so that is Pete Weber's first PBA Tour title. It took him about 6 or 7 tries to actually win his first title, but that shows the consistency at a very young age of just keep trying. And then he won that title, and he would win many more times throughout the 1980s and the 90s, and heck, even the 2000s. And Pete would retire from the PBA Tour officially from full-time competition in 2021. He would join the tour in 1980 and retire in 2021 for a 41-year career. And Pete will go down as really one of the top 5 best bowlers of all time. I don't really think he would ever get knocked out of the number 5 spot unless E.J. Tackett were to surpass him in titles. I mean, as of recording this video, EJ is only 10 titles behind Pete and 3 majors behind him, which is kind of insane to think about. But hey, top 5, top 6 bowler of all time, right up there with the best of them. Well, so if you all have enjoyed this bowling breakdown and want to watch any more of these videos, then be sure to hit that subscribe button so you will never miss any of my videos. I'm Karsatowski. Keep watching my content, and I will see you in that next video. See ya!